Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Excavating Depth, the podcast where we get to the heart of things that matter with empathy, compassion, and vulnerability. I'm your host, Megan Reimer. Welcome to episode 5. I hope you have been enjoying these podcasts and learning a lot. I've had some great conversations with some of my listeners, and it sounds like these are all things that we're going through or that are worth reflecting on, even if we're not necessarily navigating them in the moment. Today's topic is going to be a heated one, both literally and figuratively. Literally because I'm going through the emotions of this myself right now, and figuratively because we're talking about anger. And anger is heated. I'm going through this experience of anger right now. I thought it might be important to talk a little bit about what anger means, especially maybe from more of a feminine perspective or an internal perspective, as opposed to how we know anger to manifest in physical violence or yelling or rage. So I want to dive a little bit into that. So let's dive into the anger pool. The water is warm. Where do I begin? I have learned a lot about anger over the last, say, 3 years specifically. And even more so, even more so in the last 2 months or 3 months. I'm going to go back to my first recollection of anger. I don't typically consider myself to be an angry person. I don't know how to physically manifest anger. I've never been a fighter. I've never been a puncher. I've never been a yeller. Maybe a few times in my life when it was less out of anger and more out of hurt or feeling untrusted. There's some resources that say anger is a secondary emotion to something underneath, feeling sad or feeling hurt. There are other theories or people who say that anger is a core emotion. And I think that depends on how you exhibit your anger. I think if you're exhibiting your anger through physical violence or yelling or some kind of rageful act, probably there's something underneath it. You're probably feeling hurt or sad or disrespected or untrusted. I think if you're feeling your anger internally and it feels like tingly, and for me, it feels like restless leg syndrome just all over my body. Like I have to move, I have to do something. That's where I think anger shows up as a core emotion. There's nothing really behind this anger except anger. And there is hurt and there is disrespect and sadness as well. And there is anger. If I get into a verbal altercation with someone, I back down pretty quickly. I don't like confrontation. I do remember a couple of instances of being a kid and yelling, mostly at my brother, because he would push my buttons. I do remember one experience yelling at him, the most I have ever yelled at him, because he thought I did something that I actually didn't do. When I was mad or I had a shitty day, or feeling frustrated, I'd go for a drive and I would pound my fist on the top of my gear shift, and it would generate a little bit of pain in kind of the bottom of my hand. And also, it was something strong that I could get that movement, get that anger out on. But yeah, I've never really physically manifested or physically activated my anger in any other way. I'm gonna go back to the first time I felt present to anger. There was a time where anger did its thing a few years before that, but I didn't realize that's what it was doing until the last couple of weeks when I've been reflecting on this. I mentioned this in episodes 1 or 2, that it was anger that really fueled me to move to BC, move out of the house I was living in Cochrane. I lived in a condo for 10 years. This is another example of anger. In June of 2021, I put my condo up for sale. There were a lot of logistical reasons to sell that condo, including what I've mentioned before in terms of sitting and watching planes take off and land while I'm trying to heal from my trauma of being laid off from WestJet, including the fact that I now had a dog and we didn't have a yard. And there was a lot of noise around us, and including the fact that I had actually wanted to move for a couple of years, pre-COVID, getting a dog, all of these things. And one thing that I think really frustrated me was we had a neighbor who really hated us and hated Brimley specifically. And had this little remote control vehicle that they would drive around the complex, and it would get Brimley and any other dog out very riled up, and she was really hard to control and anxious, and I don't want my dog to feel that way. It makes me feel that way. And there were a few awkward instances with this guy. He knows us. He knows it irritates us. He knows it really irritates me. He knows it really pisses Brimley off. He drives his vehicle towards us. Brimley's on a leash. She wants to chase this little vehicle and bark at it. And so we keep moving away, and he keeps driving his vehicle towards us. And at one point, Brimley is chasing the vehicle, but she actually is held back by her leash. Can't get to it. And he freaks out. He's like, "You fucking touched my vehicle. She touched it. She scratched it." I'm like, "She didn't touch it. Trust me, I felt the pull." There were a couple of other instances. He was kind of scary, actually. He would follow me and my friend around the complex, and at one point, it had just snowed, and the snowplows came and plowed the snow around the complex, and they'd always pile a big pile of snow kind of right in front of our condo. We were on the 3rd floor, but we were sort of at the corner of the road. And so one day, Brimley was out on the balcony, and he was out with his car and just revving it up and down the road trying to climb this snow hill. By the way, there are 4 other snow hills around the complex. He's just in front of our house because he's a dick. And so I go out onto the balcony and I start yelling at him. "Please go away. You know what you're doing. You know you're aggravating me. You know you're aggravating my dog. You know you could be anywhere else." And every time I would try to talk, he would just rev his stupid little car up. And he was probably 50, and he was like a toddler. "I can't hear you. Can't hear you." And my neighbor below me was actually outside as well. And I think she recorded this whole situation. A neighbor in a townhouse, kind of kitty corner from me, came out and was watching this whole thing. And then our best friends, who lived 5 or 6 townhouses down, texted me and was like, "I hear the car and I hear yelling. Is that him?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, he's yelling at me and I'm yelling back at him." So she came out with her dog. And anyways, we were in this big, huge shouting match. He wanted to be as irritating as possible. And with everything else going on, with everything I was feeling about WestJet, with everything I was feeling about wanting to just generally have a bigger home, have a single family home, have a yard for the dog, in a sense, there was a feeling of inaction, a little bit of apathy. I want all these things, but I can also just stay here. And him irritating me to the point of feeling anger was enough for me to say, "I'm done. I am actually done. I'm putting my condo on the market." I was not present to it in the moment because I wasn't super familiar with the expression of anger at that time. But it seemed really kind of silly to say, I have this neighbor who's pissing me off and that's why I'm moving. There were actually a whole host of reasons why I was moving and why I wanted to move, but none of those reasons were fueling enough for me to do something. They were feelings that felt shitty, but they weren't activating feelings. They were kind of inactive feelings in that I could let them sit. I could stay where I was, and they would come and go, and it's like, I would love to do that, but that was one experience of feeling anger, was anger fully, that fueled me putting my condo on the market and getting it sold and moved. And the experience where I was truly present to my anger was when I moved to BC. I moved out of that condo, and about a month after I moved, I found my house in Cochrane, and I signed to purchase it. It was a new build. I moved in February of 2022. And when I moved in, there were neighbors on one side, an empty lot on the other, and then neighbors on the other side of that empty lot. A few empty lots in our cul-de-sac, but really we were one of the last ones to be built. We backed onto a large green space, 50,000 acres or something, just farmland. We were at the very south tip of the town, and so we were the south city limit, basically. And so it was just farmland behind us, and some of it public land. So we would have deer come by, and there were tons of trees and bushes behind us, and then on the other side was a trucking road. And so there would be trucks passing by every once in a while, but we had enough of a sound barrier from the trees and stuff like that. When we moved in, the lot next to mine was empty. And one of the first things I wanted to do was put in a fence for Brinley. I remember reaching out to that builder and just saying, what's the status of the build? I'd like to know if I could build a fence there before the house starts getting built. And they directed me to the people who had purchased the lot. And so I got to know the owners and for a year until they moved in. And we chatted quite a bit and became pretty good friends. And they moved in February 2023. And by this point, I had built a fence. My house was a few feet wider and a few feet shorter. So it gave me more yard space. It was tight on the sides, but it gave me more yard space and it was just a much more open feel. My home was about 1,850 square feet. Their home was a different builder. I think it was like 22 or 2,300 square feet. So it was much bigger than mine and was a normal width and jutted out past my house probably 10 feet. I would say. I think my deck, which was 10 feet long, barely kind of came to the end of their house. And they were on the west side of me, so their house already kind of blocked my view a little bit. And yet the presence of their house made my deck feel very closed in. Of course, the mountains are west and the sun sets in the west, and I could still see some of these things. And he moved in, and I remember us talking about what kind of stuff they would do, and they kind of briefly mentioned putting up a privacy wall on their deck because their deck was on my side of their house, right? So our decks were close, but their deck was 10 feet further out than mine because my house was a bit shorter. And we kind of talked about a privacy wall, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we'll totally let you know. Like, we want to be good neighbors. We'll totally let you know, and stuff like that. And it'll look nice, but we'll keep you in the loop for sure." And Easter Sunday, my best friend and I drove to Canmore for the day with our dogs. And I came back and there was a privacy wall up. And in all fairness, it's their right, it's their property. They can do whatever they want. And they had said to me that they would let me know, and they didn't. And it was a big privacy wall. And so now I had the blockage from the house, which already blocked my deck, and then an additional like 10-foot block or 12-foot block that was more than 6 feet high. And it made my big, open, expansive space, outdoor space, feel tiny. That felt really shitty and disrespectful. That really led to us falling out. And that was April of 2023. After that happened, I drove to one of my friends' houses. I walked in the door crying and she's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'm moving to Nanaimo." She's like, "Wait, what?" I said, "It's so bad." I said, "I can't do this. I cannot do this." In addition to that, they had started to tear down the trees behind us because this farmland was being turned into a new community, which would be like 5,000 homes with a shopping center. Directly behind our houses was expected to be a condo building. It has changed over time, but still we are kind of at, and I did buy this house knowing that this community would be built. I knew that. And the town had plans for it from like 2012. And I just thought like, I don't really see this happening anytime soon. Or I might have 5 years here, right? And that feels okay. They were taking down all the trees. Suddenly that trucking road was so loud because we had no barrier anymore. And we lost all of our wildlife, all of the trees. Now I would look at sunsets and there would be machinery in front of him. And so I really felt my anger. I felt it booming in my body. It felt like a bass, like my heartbeat, my pulse just like boom, 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 just radiating through me. And being someone who does not know how to physically move the energy of anger, which I think a lot of people do through physical acts, right? Like a punching bag or hitting a wall, or even what I did, hitting my wrist on this looks bad, knocking my hand on my gear shift in my car to just like move that energy that I just literally want to bash some shit. I'm holding myself back from doing it. He always was like, fuck, like I'm so mad, I just want to pick up my phone and throw it across the floor or throw it at the wall. And then I'm like, oh, then my phone's gonna be broken. And like that feeling and be like, thanks, it's not worth it. Remember I had a contractor come in, a tradesman come in during that time. I think he was repairing my shower. Like the fiberglass base in my shower had cracked and he came to repair it. He'd be up there for a few hours um and then he would leave And I remember going upstairs and looking in the bathroom, and there was just like the putty or the paste that he used to repair it was all over the floor, it was on the wall, it was all over the glass, like he hadn't covered anything or cleaned anything. And that infuriated me. I felt so disrespected. And I remember doing the same thing, like slamming my wrist against the countertop and punching the wall to the point that the imprint of my knuckles showed up in the drywall, which is something I have never done before. And I remember kind of falling to my knees, crying and screaming, "How fucking dare you? How dare you?" And it was pent up. It was pent up anger from my neighbors. It was pent up anger from the people tearing down the trees behind me. It was pent up anger from this guy being a jerk. And everything just felt, I was angry. I really needed some physical outlet for this anger because even this gentle, oh, I punched the wall and there's like 4 little nubs in there from my knuckles, right? Like so cute. Too gentle to even punch a wall. A, it hurt, and B, it was not as effective as I needed it to be. I had a set of kettlebells, and I remember picking up that kettlebell and being like, I just want to slam this kettlebell into the wall. But I don't want to wreck my house. So I went and I slammed it against the mattress in my guest bedroom. And just to like use up all of my energy to raise it and just like slam it down. And it still wasn't quite like the sensation I needed to feel, but there was a little bit of an outlet there. And I remember talking to a coach of mine saying, my God, I feel so fucking angry and I do not know what to do with this. Like, I have no idea what to do with this. I don't know how to physically get this feeling out of my body and I need to move it. And I'd kind of explained a few of the things I was doing and I had Googled it and all this stuff, right? And it's just like, I don't know, some useless shit. And I think the one thing I did learn was to push into a wall. And I kind of remember doing it a little bit and I didn't feel a whole lot. Again, this feels petty. I'm moving for the second time in 2 years because of a neighbor. Like, this feels kind of petty or simple. People deal with shitty neighbors all the time. And yet I'm like, no, I'm fucking leaving. I'm selling my house and I'm fucking moving to BC because of you. Fuck. Like, that feels kind of dramatic. And yet it wasn't so much the situation with the neighbor as it was the activating feeling of anger. When I sold my condo, I actually had a lot of activating feelings of anger. I was angry about the planes. I was angry about this guy. I was angry about um, the space I didn't have for Brimley and all the noise that was irritating her and some of the behavior she was exhibiting because of the space that we were in, and I was angry and it was activating and pushed me into action, which was to just list the condo and move, to the point that I didn't even have a plan after I listed that condo and sold. I was just like, I don't know, see what happens. Throwing spaghetti at the wall. And the second time I did this, I did have a plan. Although um it was forming at the same time, but I did have a plan. And again, it wasn't just one thing, it wasn't just one event, it wasn't just one person. It was this swirling of things and this coming together of all of these different events that were triggering and activating, that my apathy or inaction was no longer enough to deal with it. And I had to move into action. And it was anger that fueled that action. And, that was the end of April. And I don't know, a week later, I invited my realtor over and I told you this story that, the listing went up within like 10 days and I drove out to Nanaimo and I found my realtor and all within a month, all within 6 weeks of that privacy wall going up to purchasing this house. It was like 6 weeks or 7 weeks of anger fueled action, anger fueled guidance and energy. I just had to put my energy into this. I had to put all of my spare energy, and I wanted to put all of my spare energy into looking up houses and looking up places and like figuring out what the next move was. And that was the best way for me to navigate my anger. And on a more spiritual level, all of these little things happening were little pokes, little nudges from the universe saying, like, this is the direction we're headed. So figure it out before I drop a bomb on you. Or don't figure it out and I'm gonna drop a bomb on you, an anger bomb. And I was like, shit, okay. And out of that came landing into a space where I most feel myself and most feel aligned. And, even I said this in a previous episode, but my mom coming to visit the lot and me saying it's not BC, but it'll do. And her saying, why are you doing this and buying this house if you want to live in BC? And it was just because my action, my need to action, my need to activate was not there yet. I was in apathy. I was sitting in inaction. Yeah, I want it, but I'm not quite ready yet. So I'm just going to let this be okay. This is good enough for now. I'll just do this for now. I'm not quite ready. I'm still scared. I was really sitting in apathy, but I was apathetic to what was happening, annoyed and feeling victimized and feeling like shameful. My God, I can't move again because of a neighbor. And it was obviously not only the neighbor in both circumstances. The situations with the neighbors have been the last straw, really. The straw that broke the camel's back, whatever you want to call it. It was the last nudge from the universe. It was like one final injection of anger that lit me up. One final drop of gasoline. It was like the spark, the match being lit. I had already built the fire. I had already fueled it, doused it in gasoline, and this was just the match that set the fire on fire. I knew it was going to happen. I was just waiting for it to happen. This was the match. And I'm going to step into the anger I'm feeling now and have been feeling for at least a month, if not 2 or 3 months. And this one's very fresh. So I probably won't be able to talk about it as humorously or without feeling activated myself. But the last few months have been really activating my anger from a work perspective. And I want to be gentle on the details here because I'm not here to call anybody or anyone or any organization out. What I have been feeling is disrespect. What I have been feeling is we don't want to hear what you have to say. What I have been feeling is the value in your work is if you would just draft this email or just build this PowerPoint. That would be great. And you can just shut up about the rest. What I have been feeling is an immense stuckness. And up until last week, I was a contractor, a fractional employee, if you will. I've been doing that since I was laid off from WestJet. And that face, by the way, if you're watching, or that pause, was this immediate download that I've actually been angry for 5 years. And for 5 years, since August of 2020, I have been navigating this experience of being a contracted employee. And I was just coming out of being an employee for 14 years. Since I was 18, I knew nothing about being a contractor. I had worked with contractors. At WestJet, we brought contractors in and we brought consultants in. I thought they really defined the same person, just in two different labels. So I thought I was consulting. I thought that's what I have been doing for the last 5 years, is acting as a consultant. It's even on my resume. And on my LinkedIn, it has been for a while. I thought that's what I was doing. I did not know that there's actually a difference between consulting and functioning as a contractor. What I know about both is that you get paid more. You aren't on the company's benefits. You don't get extended health benefits or anything like that, or EI, or, you pay your own taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So I didn't realize there was a difference. I've literally just learned the difference probably in the last month. I've been showing up one way and being asked to show up a different way, or being expected to show up a different way. And those two ways of being are very conflicting. They really do not work in harmony with one another. My way of being, the way I thought I was showing up, or the way I thought they wanted me to show up, and the way I just naturally show up, is as a strategic partner, as a thought partner, as an expert in my field from whom they want recommendations and guidance. How they were asking me to show up was, we already have this figured out. We just need you to like execute the deliverables. We just need you to build this plan and build this PowerPoint and build this communication and send this out and do this and do that. Just like follow the tasks that are already laid out for you. That put me majorly in conflict with myself, really, because I was showing up one way and being asked to show up another way. As a contracted employee, I get hired through a recruiter. So it's like a third-party recruiting firm who hires all these contractors. As a consultant, I would be hired directly by the organization from me. To me, I would be hired directly by the organization. And acting as a contractor was a bit easy. It's been easy, kind of simple for me because I have a resume, which I've always had. I apply for jobs as I've always done. I interview for jobs as I've always done. And I'm good at all of that. Being a consultant requires me to sell myself, to like market and advertise and to close sales calls and stuff like that. My very first contract job was supposed to last, I think, 3 months, maybe, with the possibility for an extension, maybe 6 months. And I remember a couple of weeks into it, the person I was working for said, "You're giving me 100% and that's great, but I need you to give me 75%. You heard that correctly. I was giving 100%. They wanted me to give 75. I was giving too much, always too much. And I kind of remember thinking, like, what 25% do you want me to cut? Like, this is who I am. This is me. You're getting the full experience of me and the work I do. What 25% could you possibly want me to cut? I had no idea at the time that that was basically the delta between being a consultant and being a contractor. Like, they're saying, can you please just do what we're telling you to do instead of trying to make recommendations for different things or a different way of doing things. That contract terminated early, and it was this misalignment between what I thought, how I thought I was supposed to show up and how they wanted me to show up. Enter 5 more contracts, all with the same problem of I'm showing up with a consultant mindset, and they want me to show up as just someone who's there to do things, to build deliverables, build a plan and build deliverables. And that made each one of those contract jobs so incredibly difficult because I only know how to thrive over here and I'm being stifled. I don't know how to thrive here. I was actually doing this at WestJet. I was an employee, but I was a thought partner. I was a strategic partner. I had influence. I made recommendations. I was heard. I was listened to. I was respected. I didn't just go in and do. I was not just this like robotic doer. And so it was a very, very conflicting situation for me to be in. And it is why all but one really contract has ended early, either through me ending it early because I felt the tension and I was completely miserable. And so I took some action, or through the client ending it early because we weren't in sync and step with one another. And my most recent feelings of anger have come from a very similar place. And it feels very conflicting with my morals, my values, and how I show up. And so for the last few months, I have been feeling this anger and this tension. And I have been feeling very stuck. And I show up to work, but I don't put a lot of effort in. And it's very like, what's the point? But it's coming much from a place of apathy and victimhood. Something I have learned about and have been learning more about is called energy leadership. And I won't get too much into it, but it basically says that there are 7 levels of energy that we all navigate through. It says that 2 of them, levels 1 and 2, are catabolic, or kind of chaotic, and 5 of them are anabolic, or a bit more creative and peaceful. Level 1 is where you're essentially experiencing like a victimhood mentality, and not in the sense that you are the true victim of crime or something like that, but that you're experiencing this victimhood mentality of like, woe is me, I fuck up, I suck, I'm a failure. I'm never going to be better than this. And in that space, there's a lot of inaction. There's a lot of feeling of feelings, but not a lot of doing of things because, I could sell the condo, but I hate living here. This sucks. Everybody's mean to me, but I deserve it, or I can't do better than this anyway. I can't afford it. I don't know what I would do. And you just stay stuck. You stay stuck in this level of apathy, in this level of victimhood, and you just do nothing. And everything is an attack on you. And it feels really raw. It feels really emotional to be in that space because you just feel like rocks just keep piling on you. And there's just absolutely nothing you can do to get out from underneath these rocks. Very common, very typical to operate at that level. This is like, I lose no matter what. I lose. I'm fucked no matter what. I'm just fucked. Level 2 is primarily rooted in anger. It's where a lot of social justice comes from. It's where a lot of people protest from anger. And again, not a level I'm used to operating at. Anger, conflict, anger-fueled action, not a level I'm used to operating at. That would mean like quitting a shitty job that you hate instead of just saying, I hate my shitty job, but I'll probably never quit because I don't know what else I would do because I need the money, because I have bills to pay. And level 2 is like, fuck that shitty job. Fuck this. I'm over playing small. I'm over this. I'm quitting. Level 1 is like, nah, I'll just wait to get fired, right? Like, I'll just keep doing shitty work because I suck anyway. I'll just wait to get fired because that's what I deserve. And level 2 is like, fuck that. I'm quitting. And it's really where action comes from. And I have seen myself kind of flip-flop between these two levels of energy over the last couple of months especially. And level 1 for me is like I'm just sitting, I'm a victim in being a contractor because I just like sit on the edge in anxiety and I just wait to be pushed off because everybody else is in control of my future except for me. As a contracted employee, I can be fired at any time, really without cause. And so I just feel like I'm constantly sitting on the edge waiting to be fired. Just like what happened with my first contract, right? You're just like sitting on the edge. And that kind of trauma stays with you because you're like, oh my God, when is this going to happen again? And level 2 is really what happened in my second contract, which is that I quit because I was so infuriated with the dynamics of that work relationship. So I quit. And I had a lot of people who were like, what the fuck are you doing? You don't just quit things because they're hard. And I'm like, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. It's not that they're hard, it's that they're misaligned. It's that I'm not getting through. What's the point? And the next few contracts were kind of ebbs and flows, but the anger I have been feeling over these last few months has been fueling me to explore something bigger, and including kind of reading the book on energy leadership. I have been coached in energy leadership before, so I'm familiar with it, but I actually want to introduce it into my work, and so I've been reading the book about it. And where I have reflected on the other times that anger propelled me. I knew about the anger-fueled motivation that had me sell my house in Cochrane and move to BC. That one was always been present to me. In this moment, I remembered the anger-fueled selling of my condo. And a few days ago, I think I was reflecting on this and recalled another instance where anger really fueled me to do something different and ironically brilliant. In 2018, I was working at WestJet and I was the uniform program manager, and we were designing a new uniform. And I was helping coordinate all of that. We were also changing uniform providers, and a new leader came to the organization who I thought I would like at first. And then he very quickly kind of started changing some of the parameters of my job and slowly just kind of got moved off a lot of the work that I was doing into this very, like, again, just isolated way of working, this very just like deliverable way of working. And a lot of who I was also being stifled. He started to repress me and how I was, my personality. And that started to become very frustrating to me, of course. And again, I was living in kind of this level 1 apathy for a long time. Like, I'm just fucked. He's just going to keep taking things away from me and I'm going to be left with nothing. And there's nothing I can do about this. And I had applied a couple of times to communications jobs at WestJet. And I think the most recent hire of people into those roles were people who primarily had master's degrees. In communications, I had a bachelor's degree. I did not have a master's degree. And I kind of remember thinking like, fuck, like now I have to have a master's degree for this. I think it was really out of anger that I propelled myself to look into railroads and apply. And I even kind of remember saying to this boss, oh, I've applied to go back to school. And he's like, why? School is meaningless. It was really anger, actually, that propelled me to apply because I felt so angry with what I was doing. And that master's degree gave me so much more, so much more than what I thought it would. And I don't know that I would have ever taken that degree or even thought about it had I not been fueled by the anger I was feeling. Because I think those people who had been hired for a few master's degrees had been hired for a while, and I remember thinking like, this is what I have to do, like, ugh, fuck that. How am I not good enough for this? I'm not good enough for this. And staying in that level one like victim energy. Enter nudge from the universe, which was this jerk boss, and that was like a significant shove from the universe. It was not a nudge in any way, and my job fell apart, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this. I never wanted to do this job, and now it's time to realign. And this master's degree in communications, which is what I want to do, will help me do that. And so that fueled me in a way I didn't realize, but it was anger fueled. Today is Tuesday, and on Friday, the contract I had been working was terminated early, fundamentally because I've been showing up in a way they did not want me to show up, and not showing up in the way they wanted me to, because those are actually two different jobs. They're two different versions. And I've been playing big over here and being asked to play smaller. I've been playing and operating at 100% and being asked to operate at 75. And I cannot do that. And thank God that I've been feeling these nudges and this anger for a couple of months, because I've already been thinking about what's next for me. And it's not another contract. It's stepping fully into a consultant role. And so I've been learning how to build that and what that actually means and what I need to do that. And last week I felt angry. I felt really angry over some things that were happening. And on Wednesday evening, so not even a week ago, last Wednesday, something happened that really, really angered me. And I took Brimley and scooped her up and we went to the beach, and it was a full moon. And I sat by that full moon for a little bit and I cried. And this full moon was all about like letting go of security and comfort. And I thought that's very appropriate because stepping into something brand new is letting go of security. And it is something, it's what I've been working on to do, starting before I'm ready. The name of a program I'm literally doing right now. And it's terrifying. I sat with the moon for a little bit, and I could have sat there all night, but I felt so activated, so incredibly activated, that I had to come home and put energy into creation. I came home, I had a shower, and I still felt so much pent up energy that for the first time, I truly, like with all of my energy, pushed against a wall. I felt like I was a wrestler, like you get low and you're like pushing against the wrestler and your feet are grounded. And I just screamed. I screamed. And it was a low guttural scream that I'm fairly certain if anybody had heard, they would have thought I was in labor. And I just pushed against the wall and pushed and pushed and screamed and just ah, for a few minutes. Brimley just perked up as I did that. And when I was doing it, she came to like, Mom, are you okay? What are you doing? What on earth is going on? Are you okay? And I was like, I am okay, baby. Let's go create. And I sat down for probably 5 hours and I just created all of the things that I will need for my new business, my new consultancy, building framework and getting language figured out and building offers. And I actually spent that night building an acronym out that I want to use as methodology, and simultaneously being angry. Angry at people, angry at situations, yes, but angry that I have been asked and expected to play small, and that I have abided by that I've said yes to playing small. Fuck playing big. And I am no longer allowing there to be a delta between what people are asking me to do and how I'm showing up. I'm showing up this way. If you don't want it, find someone else who's showing up this way, but I'm showing up like this. And if you want it, great. And if you don't, that's okay. But this is where my power is. This is where my zone of genius is. This is where all of my expertise and all of my big feeling, big heartedness is. And this is where I feel in flow and abundant and secure. And so this is where you can meet me if you want my service. And the universe is going to test me again. I know it will. And say like, hey, here's a contract. It's good money. Do you want it? And my level 1 victimhood fear is gonna creep in again. I gotta pay my bills. I gotta pay my mortgage. Maybe, this, I'm not getting any clients. Maybe I should just do this. And I have to stay in like the activation of anger for a little bit because it's pushing me to take all of these actions, take all of these beautiful creative actions. I'm confident I'm gonna be successful because I have this really beautiful anger that's fueling me. And so it's been 4 days since my contract was terminated. And on LinkedIn yesterday, I updated all of my stuff. I am, no longer a contractor. I'm an executive change empowerment guide. I'm launching a consultancy. Want to be a part of it? Hit me up. And I'm just like staying in anger. I didn't even want to record this podcast today because I'm still feeling so much. So I wanted to go create for the business. But this is also an avenue of creation, and I just thought it was so appropriate this timing that I needed to share. Getting to the heart of this, we often see anger as represented physically through yelling, through physical violence, through punching shit, through breaking shit, rage rooms. And I think there's definitely appropriate avenues for all of that. If you're feeling like restless in your body or like you need to open a door to let some energy out. If you're not used to feeling anger, it can feel scary. And it can feel something that you're unsure of what to do with. And there are a lot of things that you can do productively with anger. I think they can ultimately all be summed up in like creative expression or creative creation. I actually wish that more of us operated from a level of anger because I see people who are operating from a level of apathy. I see it in my friends who are miserable at their jobs, or people who are miserable in their relationships, or who have a lot of fear around money, or even me, like with my body and movement, I'm still operating from a level of apathy. I'm waiting to be mad. I'm waiting for something to really anger me. I don't know how to self-generate anger to fuel myself. I'm waiting for something to make me really mad. But I wish we would operate more because I see so many people stuck. And I just think like, aren't you angry about this? And I think like, why aren't you doing something about this? And it's really because we're not in that like, I have some power here. If level 1 is I lose, you win. Level 2 is I win, you lose. And I think there is some balance to that when it's just anger in yourself, there is not really any losing. You're just winning. And that's a feeling I think we could all benefit from feeling time to time. So getting to the heart of this, recognizing anger for what it is. Anger is an emotion. It's a healthy emotion. It can be an emotion that can fuel you if you let it, if you see it that way. I, by the way, have no anger for the people or the situation that happened to me last week. My anger is just in, I need to get to the next thing because my anger is fueled by misalignment. And so if you're not used to feeling anger, or you are feeling angry and you don't know what to do with it, again, anger is a natural, healthy human emotion. The challenge we see with anger is how we express it. And we seem to only know the expression of anger through rage. And yet there is all this action that can come out of anger that is okay. It's okay when it comes out of sadness. Oh, you're sad, so you did something. So why isn't it okay that it comes out of anger? Anger is by far more propelling. And sit with it. Think about if there are times where you've made big changes in your life where you were actually fueled by anger and you just didn't know it. Or you couldn't accept it at the time, or it wasn't allowed. And think about if there were moments of anger that turned into genius, in a sense, or turned into flow. Because that anger was probably telling you that something was misaligned. And sometimes shit happens a little bit quicker than we expect. And we need that energy to keep us going. We need that energy to help us find the next thing. We need that energy to help us step into alignment. That's what it did for me when I did my master's degree. Master's degree was very aligning. And it was like immediately as soon as I applied for my master's degree, aligning jobs came to me, and I got to get out of that job and away from that leader and away from all that bullshit. And the same was true when I moved. I got to get away from all of it both times. And I got to get away from the anger I was feeling around a lot of things that had culminated and step into further alignment and flow being here. Now I'm doing it again. I am letting this anger fuel me. I'm letting this anger propel me to the place I always should have been, the place I should have been 5 years ago. And I just kept falling back into what was easy, where I didn't have to show up fully, even though I did. Even though I did. I didn't have to, though, but I did. And that's where the misalignment was. And I'm letting this anger push me into realignment again. So if you're feeling anger, if you do feel anger, know that it's okay. And look for the action it is asking you to take. Again, a really good example is social justice. Protesting, signing petitions, going out into the streets, making your voice loud, even reposting stuff that you see for others to see online. That's all fueled by anger. The anger for the situation that's happening right now. And those are not bad things. It's important to know that these levels of energy, there are no good or bad. They all have advantages and disadvantages. And we are meant to move through all of them. And some of them are like really action driven and some of them are not. Level 2 is a very action driven level. And it's not a bad one as long as you harness it properly. And it's not protesting and smashing shit. It's protesting. It's not being angry and smashing shit. It's being angry. It's not being angry and yelling at someone. It's being angry and yelling in a pillow or yelling against the wall. It's not being angry and hurting somebody else physically or emotionally. It's being angry and allowing yourself space and pause to see, where am I misaligned? This anger is calling me to alignment. I must be misaligned somewhere. Where is that? And how can I use this anger to create alignment? My beautiful friend who is a teacher in Alberta right now. And if you know what's happening in Alberta with teachers, then you know how angry they are. And been part of it all. They did a protest at the Capitol building in Edmonton a few weeks ago, and she was there. And she has started to create a couple of resources to sell. And we've been kind of talking about the things that we're doing. And I think she said to me last night or this morning, isn't it funny how quickly we do these things when we're stressed out about money? And I didn't really think too much about it and I didn't really process it too much. But as I'm reflecting on it now, I'm thinking it's not actually about stress for money. That might be part of it. But I think what we're both feeling is rooted in anger. She's rightfully furious about the situation that's happening to her right now. And her fellow teachers of having rights taken away and just being generally in this frustrating space of being on strike or being unpaid or being disrespected. And my energy of creation is also coming from anger of being disrespected. And, the money will come. And of course, we could have done these things when we had all of this money flowing in, but we didn't feel that angry creative energy at that time because things were flowy and abundant. And now I'm just harnessing this angry energy into creation. My contract had ended first thing on Friday morning. And on Friday, I just talked with my people and vented and explained the situation. And also in a lot of the same breaths, I was saying, I'm already starting to build the next thing. I'm using this as an opportunity to step into the next thing. And then I took the weekend, and yesterday is my first kind of work day. I was so productive. I was more productive than I have been in months. Just anger-fueled building my shit for myself. Building the next thing because I am so done playing small and being asked to play small, being expected to play small. That's what makes me angry, actually, is that I have been expected and have said yes to playing small. I want to exist in a space where I'm expected and say yes to playing big. That's where I'm harnessing this angry energy. I'm going to again say this, I think for the third time, getting to the heart of this. Anger is a fueling energy. It fuels us. It fuels us to look for misalignment and step into alignment. It fuels us to look at where and why we are hurt or sad or disrespected and change that. It fuels us to move out of this level 1 of apathy and stuckness and victimhood and into something where we can activate and create. And if you're feeling more of this level 1 apathy, victimhood, stuckness, which we all feel, and it is okay, I want to just encourage you. What does level 2 anger look like? What does level 2 energy activation look like? What are some ways you have seen anger show up in your life, and how have you harnessed it or rejected it or expressed it? And are there any spaces right now where you are feeling that tinge of anger? And what is it telling you? What might you be able to fuel or create with that anger? Because I promise there is something. It's telling you something. So I encourage you to sit with that. And yeah, just like let anger is kind of fun to play in, because things open up. And I've played in scarcity. I've played in victimhood scarcity. And I was applying to be a skip the dishes driver, or more recently, attempting to get paid to fill out surveys. I think I made $1 and it took me like 2 hours, and there were a whole bunch of surveys I wasn't qualified for, and that just like reeled my victimhood of like, fuck, can't do this. And here I am literally a month later, and I'm just in full-blown creation, building something way more than filling out a survey, where my expertise, my energy, my empathy, all of that gets to come through truly in a way that I get to create and decide for myself, instead of other people telling me how I get to show up. Allow anger in, let anger in, and see how you play with it, and see how you utilize it, and see what you create from it. I promise it's a more harnessing, energetic feeling than it is rageful. We've been taught to be scared of it. I believe we can harness it for goodness and breaking down the door of what's keeping us stuck, right? Like letting us move to the next level. With that, I'm going to end here. Thank you for joining me. I hope this has been a revealing conversation, and I'd love to hear from you on if you have seen anger show up in your life, and how you've let it help you create or stepped into its ask for expansion. Thank you for joining me. I will see you soon, loves.